There's a kind of intelligence that hides in plain sight. It doesn't wear medals. It doesn't hang certificates on the wall. It doesn't beg for recognition or applause. You won't see it tested, scored, or written about in safe little essays. It doesn't sit at the front, waving for attention. It sits in the shadows, silent, still, calculating. And while the rest of the world bows to charisma and paper titles, this mind is already positioning itself where no hand can touch it. It's the presence that glides into a room without a sound and leaves a lingering unease that no one can name. You've felt it before, the man who never raises his voice yet strips the air bare with a glance. The woman whose voice is soft, yet carries the weight of a storm buried beneath glassy water. This mind doesn't hunger for applause. It hungers for control. This is dark intelligence. And once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. It doesn't erupt. It coils. It doesn't argue. It plants roots in your thinking. It doesn't confront. It decides. The moment you understand this, you stop running after power. You let it run toward you. Machiavelli never worshipped intellect for its sparkle. He valued it for its ability to dominate quietly, invisibly, without ever needing to announce its presence. Real power isn't loud, it's patient, dangerous, and unseen. Until it's already too late. No one will hand you this knowledge, not in schools built to produce obedient minds, not in books designed to comfort the weak, not in polite conversations meant to keep everyone tame. Because if people truly understood how dark intelligence moves, they'd feel your shadow long before you moved a finger. You don't start by talking, you start by watching. You stand still in the storm everyone else is drowning in, and you watch them panic. At first, you're only quiet, not timid, but awake. You don't speak to be heard, you speak only to extract. You catch the slips in their stories, the trembling in their tone, the emotional leaks they can't seal. You laugh at their jokes, not because they amuse you, but because you're cataloging every scrap of desperation, ego, and insecurity. You begin to see the code the world runs on, and it's all made of lies. They fight over nothing. They defend fragile identities built on rotten beams. They shout because they're afraid. They puff themselves up while rotting inside. You don't watch to judge them. You watch to learn. And once you learn, everything changes. You see that people only become unpredictable when they feel cornered. Make them feel safe, and they turn into glass. That's when you move. You don't storm their walls. You ask questions that sound harmless but slice open their defenses. You sit in silence until their nerves betray more than their words. You don't need their confession. Their emotions tell you everything. While they think they're in control, you've already mapped their weaknesses, charted their patterns, and collected leverage without them realizing the knife is already against their throat. That's the beauty of dark intelligence. It thrives when others grow careless. It collects while they perform. It notices what they've trained themselves to ignore. Over time, your vision sharpens. You stop seeing personalities, you see patterns. Charm stops impressing you. You pick it apart like rotten fruit. Confidence no longer fools you. You hunt for its cracks. You can smell the liar before they speak, see the traitor before they turn, identify the fool before they act. Your advantage becomes time, seconds faster, moves ahead. You're no longer reacting, you're orchestrating. The shift isn't in getting smarter, it's in stripping away your naivete. The game isn't about truth, it's about perception. It's not about trust, it's about control. People lie to survive, to themselves and to others. And if you can guide their illusions, you can guide their fate. That's not IQ, that's power. Your language changes. Every word is sharpened steel. You stop defending yourself, stop proving your worth. You no longer waste breath on disrespect. Retaliation is loud, but regret is silent and far more corrosive. You stop playing by their rules. You start writing your own. You don't declare your intentions, you conceal them. You don't explain, you let the aftermath do the talking. Pain becomes data. Rejection becomes fuel. You stop craving acceptance, you crave precision. You no longer beg to be seen, you learn to disappear so cleanly they don't notice you're gone until they need you.
Machiavelli called this the silent metamorphosis, when someone stops trying to be accepted by a broken world and starts bending the world to their shape. No one sees the change coming. They still think you're harmless. They don't realize they've been walking into a trap built months, maybe years in advance. You no longer chase power. You are power. Dark intelligence is not born from a lightning strike of genius. It's forged in hours upon hours of strategic silence, watching, dissecting, refining. Now, you don't compete, you control the arena. You don't chase validation, you craft outcomes. Attention no longer seduces you. Proving yourself is irrelevant. What you've built is quiet, razor-sharp, and permanent. When you step into a room now, people don't just notice, they adjust themselves. Trait 1, emotional disconnection, the calm that unnerves everyone else. You don't flinch at insults. You don't buckle under heat. You've severed the tie between your emotions and your identity. Anger becomes strategy. Fear becomes insight. Sadness becomes silence. You don't suppress, you weaponize. While others drown in emotion, you turn it into an edge honed for the perfect moment. It's not emptiness. It's the sound of a blade being sharpened in your mind. Trait 2, surgical observation. You no longer just see people. You slice them open with your eyes. Their hands when they lie. Their eyes when they warrant. Their posture when they think they're safe. You don't need their words. You can feel the truth before they speak. You hear what they hide. They can sense it, that weight in your stare, the pause before your reply, the unshakable sense that you see them more clearly than they see themselves. They don't know why, but they can't fake anything around you anymore. Machiavelli said, betrayal is inevitable. You don't treat it as surprise, you treat it as schedule. You no longer hope for loyalty, you plan for treachery, and that makes you untouchable. Trait 3, controlled presence. Your silence swallows their noise. You're not there to impress, you're there to bend the room. You reveal little, never enough to be predictable. And in that gap, fear grows. People adjust their words, their posture, even their tone around you. You're no longer common. You're a rare presence, and rarity breeds value. Trait 4, strategic speech. Most speak to be noticed. You speak to leave marks. Every word measured, every pause deliberate. When you speak, conversations tilt. You don't argue, you redirect. You use tone like a knife. You ask questions that peel them apart without them realizing they've been cut. Your goal isn't to win the moment. It's to plant a thought that blooms later when they're alone, wondering why they suddenly doubt themselves. And then comes the most dangerous trait of all, unshakable self-reliance. You no longer need applause, agreement, or understanding. You've cut the leash of dependence. When you need nothing from anyone, you can't be controlled. You bury the old self, the one that begged for answers, waited for closure, explained itself to deaf ears. Now you vanish when the energy shifts, not as punishment, but as precision.
You move like smoke, impossible to hold, impossible to predict. And people feel your absence like an ache. They begin to fear you for reasons they can't explain. You don't raise your voice or demand anything, yet they shift in your presence. You don't announce boundaries, you are the boundary. You don't ask for respect, you carry it in your posture. They can't measure you. There's nothing to grab, no visible weakness, no clear motive, no familiar pattern. That absence of vulnerability is dominance in its purest form. This is the hidden language of power, not roars, but quiet changes in the air that everyone feels, but no one can name. And once you master it, the rules will never be the same. Conversations aren't casual anymore. They're battlegrounds disguised as small talk. Relationships aren't havens of trust. They've become silent arenas of strategy. The more you look closely, the more you see most people don't bend toward truth, they bend toward approval. They crave to be noticed, to be included, to be validated. And in that hunger, they bleed out every secret, their fears, their wounds, the very levers that can move them. You, however, hold back. Not because you're shy, not because you're fragile, but because you've learned patience is sharper than any weapon. You let them speak. You let them loosen the threads of their own story until the whole tapestry hangs in disarray. Their silences fill with tension. Their words give you maps of their weak points. You're not looking for pity, you're placing your pieces. You let false assumptions stand when they serve you. Because now you know, anything you reveal can be twisted into a blade, but what you collect about them is currency. You notice what others skip past. The sting wrapped in a joke. The smile shielding panic. The gift meant to secure obedience. And when someone oversteps, you don't raise your voice or force a scene, you vanish. In your world, conflict wastes energy. Absence strikes deeper than argument. People expect drama, but you give them silence. In that silence, they're forced to sit with the shadow you've left, and slowly regret eats at them. Not because you punished them, but because you took away what they assumed would always be there. You didn't throw a tantrum, you made a choice. And that choice is what makes you unreachable. Soon, your presence begins to rewrite the air around you, not through intimidation, but through a quiet that feels dangerous. People notice you don't trade in gossip. You don't over-explain your boundaries. You aren't distant out of spite. You're exact. Your restraint isn't hostility. It's precision. They sense you're not fooled by performance, and that awareness unsettles them. You see the fractures they hide. This is where most lose themselves, in the emotional quicksand of relationships. They chase love at the cost of sight. They label betrayal as loyalty. They beg for attention when they should be observing. But for you,
Connection is no longer shelter, it's negotiation. Acts of kindness are potential investments. Confessions are potential weapons. Silence becomes an unspoken trade. And in this field, you don't bare your soul. You reflect theirs. You turn into a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous because they give truth, not comfort. People claim to want truth, but most only want reassurance. When they face you, they face the things they've avoided in themselves. That's why even your smile can unsettle them. Your quiet weighs heavier than any praise they could give you. They start asking themselves, why do they feel uncertain after speaking to you? Why do they replay every exchange? It's because you refuse to play into the emotional cues they expect. You don't reinforce their lies. You don't feed their illusions. You let their own words expose what they meant to hide. You never hurry them. You never interrupt. But they leave feeling stripped bare. When manipulation comes your way, it fails, not because you fight it, but because you no longer bite the bait. You've mastered the pause. You've let silence do the work. You let their games collapse under their own weight. And when you do speak, it's calm, unshakable, final. You don't argue. You conclude. By this point, something irreversible has shifted.
They press, provoke, poke, not out of hate, but out of uncertainty. People try to shake what they can't define. But you don't take the bait. You don't step into their ring. You let their attempts crumble under their own force. Because disrespect doesn't call for a fight. It calls for removal. You win every conflict you never step into. You're not dodging confrontation. You're dodging waste. Wasted words, wasted breath, wasted time. You've learned that your hours are sacred, and only those who move with honesty and purpose deserve them. You don't declare this. You prove it in your pace, in your standards, in the quiet rules that guide you. Eventually, people begin to shift when you're near, not because you force them, but because your energy demands alignment. They don't hear your boundaries, they feel them. They don't see your expectations, they sense them. You no longer fold yourself to fit their comfort. Instead, they either rise to meet yours or fade away. It's not cruelty, it's precision. And that precision terrifies those who thrive in disorder. You've taken away their favorite tool, your emotional access. You no longer let their moods steer your movements. You no longer let their storms sweep you in. You've built something stronger than attachment. You've built strategy. People call it cold because they've never seen love without dependency, loyalty without blindness, connection without control. You haven't become less human. You've become more awake. You've sharpened your awareness of yourself, of others, of the games hidden in plain sight. That awareness draws some closer and pushes others away. But you're not chasing anymore. You're not even attracting. You're filtering. Life grows quieter, cleaner, not because you've shut it out, but because you've refined it. Fewer words, fewer steps, fewer people. That's the truest sign of growth, when you stop fearing misunderstanding because you've stopped needing it. You've stopped playing their game. You've built your own, where silence cuts deeper than shouting, where distance shields more than defense ever could. Your presence becomes intentional, rare, unreadable. Power isn't something you flash. It's something you wear like a second skin, not through performance, but through exactness, not with noise, but with weight. This is the final stage, when intellect cools, when logic smothers desperation, when your mind becomes sharper than insult and heavier than threat. You stop reacting to every ripple, because not every ripple matters. In this stillness, you learn something most will never understand. Real control doesn't shout, it assumes. You can enter a room in silence and alter its entire gravity, not by intimidating, but by being unreadable. What they can't read, they can't predict. What they can't predict, they can't prepare for. And that's where power begins. You've become the fox in Machiavelli's lesson, not the lion that roars, but the fox that waits, watches, and moves once with precision. You don't roar to prove strength, you whisper, and your absence becomes the echo that shakes the walls. Now, no relationship can ensnare you with guilt or affection. You see through the theater, the promises, the power plays. You move like a surgeon, precise, invisible, untraceable. Every step has intent, every pause has pressure, every departure has consequence. Most people still want love at any cost. You want freedom. They want to be admired. You want to remain untouchable. They want to be understood. You want to remain unreadable. That's the divide. That's why you win without shouting, without battles, without revenge, because you've stopped reacting and started designing. Every word is chosen, every presence is earned, every access is temporary. No one owns a piece of you anymore because you no longer pay for connection with your peace. You don't buy closeness with vulnerability. You don't prove yourself to people still searching for themselves. This is what dominance in silence looks like. Clarity as armor, strategy as movement, a presence that doesn't beg, a mind that doesn't break, a spirit that doesn't chase. Your intelligence has evolved beyond knowledge. It's a weapon, not to harm, but to steer, to shield, to shape. You don't flaunt it. You don't broadcast it. You exist in it. And the world bends around it, because the strongest force in any space is the one that cannot be read, cannot be shaken, cannot be baited into chaos. You've become unreadable, unshakable, unstoppable. And no one saw it coming, because you never announced it. You never pleaded for recognition. You refined yourself in the quiet, and when the moment came, you stepped forward not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who no longer needs it. You became the glitch in their pattern, the invisible influence behind their outcomes, the mind they couldn't control, the exit they didn't anticipate. This is dark intelligence, silent, strategic, sovereign. And by the time they realize it, you've already gone.